Welcome to Slow and Steady, the podcast where you get to follow along as we build products in public. Each week, we'll give you an honest peek into our lives as we share our struggles, our wins, and everything in between. I'm Benedicte, and I'm feeling optimistic.
And I'm Benedikt. Today is September 10th. This is episode number 208, and I'm feeling excited.
Oh!
They were pretty positive today. That's
such positive feelings. What are you excited about?
I'm excited because tomorrow I'm leaving for Dublin to go to EmberFest and meet our developer Leo for the first time ever. So
Yoo-hoo!
That's kind of exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's basically what I'm excited about, and that's basically my update.
That's your update.
Last week I've been on vacation. Didn't do well, to be honest. I was on vacation, but I feel like I checked work Slack a lot and answered questions and stuff like that. But I don't know, like we were traveling by train. And do you know, like when you kind of expect a train to be late, so you take an earlier train to catch, to be sure to make the connection.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened to us was the earlier train was super on time, not delayed at all. And the connecting train was super delayed. So we spent like 2 or 3 hours at the train station waiting for our train.
That's some good margins.
Anyways, that's good margins, but also that was the point where I was like, okay, I could probably also just check work.
Mm-hmm. I also feel like sometimes, like if you're on the train traveling and you're checking Slack and you're answering some questions and like looking at the window, and it's not the same as like sitting at your computer trying to figure out some complex stuff, or it's like some things you can do in between. It's good to check out properly every now and then, but like I feel like it's okay to like do some of that in between every now and then too, especially because that makes it so that you could probably do more. Like if you can do more of these things, as we talked about before, if you like do it a little.
Yeah.
I
mean, it's not a vacation in that sense, but the weird thing was, I feel like being on vacation and still allowing myself to check in with work brought that freedom with it, right? Like, so
exactly.
When you're usually checking work, there's all these responsibilities you have. Like you have to, I don't know, attend those meetings, make sure someone gets unblocked and stuff like that. But when you're on vacation, but still check in, you can like cherry pick what you want to do, right? So you can just answer the support tickets that you feel like are interesting or like that are quick and nice to do, and just ignore everything else that's annoying. So I didn't feel bad about it. And it was still a good time off.
Yeah. Where did you go again?
We went to Munich with some friends. I actually met them there. And we did the Harry Potter expedition that was touring there, which honestly was a little bit, I don't know. Like, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't super exciting. And there were way too many people.
So this this late train was in Germany? Like my worldview is now shattered.
You don't know nothing about German trains. That urban myth or legend or whatever about German trains being always on time is a myth for the last 10 years at least. Oh. The German railway system is incredibly messed up.
The Norwegian one as well.
It's amazing. Like it's at a point where it's actually funny. Like and we experienced this on Monday. So the train we were supposed to catch and then was announced as 45 minutes late. So okay, fair enough. We were there early. We were basically an hour too early there, plus the 45 minutes. So it was a long time. But anyways, while we were waiting in that 45-minute window, it started shifting, right? It was 40 minutes, 50 minutes, something like that. Eventually, I think it got up to 55. And then we were already sitting on the platform waiting for it to arrive. And we were like, okay, yeah, whatever, 10 more minutes, something like that. And then suddenly there was an announcement that the train is now 45 minutes late. And in that second, the train arrived. It was like, why? How? Like, how could you not have known?
Like, I mean, it's interesting because it's like it's a physical thing and it's moving towards the station. Like it's not like it's like lost in some log somewhere on a server.
It's not a surprise that it's just 1,000 meters out there. Like why did you expect it to take like 10 more minutes for those last meters?
We had the exact same experience here in Norway now, where the train was not on the like roster, or like we have like this like big, display that shows everything that comes in and out of the central station. The train we were catching were not there, and I was like, that's weird. Like this is this system I used to trust. So I like walk up to the information desk, and I'm like, the train we're supposed to take is not on there. Does this mean it's not coming? Like, what is happening? And they're like, and then she logged in and like checked the website for trains. I'm like, I can do that. Like you work at this train station. You're at the info booth.
Don't you have any inside information? I hope
you have like more inside information than that. And then like they didn't have any information. And then I overheard somebody else saying that, oh, you could take another train to the station. And I was like, okay, we're just going to grab this other train. But it's like, that's when you feel, businesses have gotten too fragmented and too big where there's no information flow at all.
Yeah.
And anyway,
yeah, exactly.
This is a train. Us complaining about trains. It used to be good. Now it's bad.
It used to be good. And to be honest, in general, I'm still a fan of trains as a way of transport because I think it's super smart and it could be so great, but unfortunately it's not. And there was a news headline a week ago or 2 weeks ago where apparently the German railway company cannot calculate schedules anymore because it's so messed up with construction and crappy infrastructure that they basically resorted to estimating
like best effort.
Best effort. Like we can't tell you when the train's arriving. It's going to be within those 10-minute windows, something like that. So it's a mess, but we made it eventually, and the way back was super smooth, all things considered. So yeah, was still a nice trip.
That's true. Because I was thinking this is like halfway what we're struggling with that we now is estimating arrivals. Just as a segue into what I'm working at. So I just managed to make it so that the bikes, so we rent out or leases out bikes, electric bikes, and all of our bikes are leased. And we have a wait list about, over 100 people on the wait list. And obviously some people are churning and they're resigning their lease. And the way the system was set up is that there was a status flag on a bike that had statuses like active, reserved, resigned, available for sale, which means available for rent or available for lease, and some other statuses. But that made sense when all the bikes were new. But now a bike can be resigned, but it should still be, and it's resigned, and it should be available for new people to order it. So right. I kind of detangled the available for sale status out of the status field. That's what I've been doing the last 2 weeks on Wii. And I managed to make that work. But it's still kind of super hacky because why this triggered this thought is that people have resigned and we know they're supposed to deliver a bike by a certain date because that's when they stop paying or that's when their resignation kind of actually goes into effect. And this is the difference between fiscal systems and our regular SaaS, because in a regular SaaS, you just shut off access, right? But right. They have to come and deliver the bike at the end of this period. So we kind of have that date and we can say, okay, this bike will be available from that date plus like say a week because we need to do some like work on it. But there are so many things that could happen, like the person could not show up, and then we'll need to contact them. They might never show up, which makes it kind of like a stolen bike. That hasn't happened though, but those things could happen. It could come back and have something that needs to be fixed that is like really hard to fix, and we can't get the bike ready in time. And how the system has worked and is still working now is that if I resign and you order a bike, you are assigned my bike, like that specific frame number bike. And that's usually the one that will be released, or like the one that's supposed to be coming back at the earliest time. But when you then arrive, maybe that bike isn't there, you get another bike. So then we have to take the bike that you were assigned and like assign it to the bike that somebody else was assigned to that you got. And that is how it is still working, because that's how it works. And I didn't want to change too much. So now I'm thinking about like, how can we make it so that, okay, within this window, we have X amount of bikes coming in and we have X amount of bike ordered. So we need to kind of deduct how many we have available for other people to order, and like how we can, because I don't think we can like sell all of them. Like we should always have like
a buffer.
Or like have a sliding window where, we sell the bikes that we know are coming in or should be coming in within a month or two, because it's about a 3-month resignation period. So we could sell maybe those bikes. And then if something happens, we can like push it a little bit and like grab one of the bikes that are supposed to come in. But that is something I've never modeled before, because this is like physical space. So this train thing just made me think about that. And I haven't been able to like properly wrap my head around how I should model that. Like I have the orders, I have the resignations, but then how should we make sure we're not selling too many bikes?
Interesting.
Any thoughts?
Yeah.
Any thoughts, dear listener? DM me if this is like a known thing, because I imagine it's the same thing for like leasing cars, which is like a much more known domain. But
it reminds me of a consulting project I did 15 years ago, maybe longer than that. And it was basically a management app for a company that was doing product placement. It was a product placement agency, sort of. So they had contracts with like car manufacturers and I don't know, stuff, right? And they would basically get cars from them and other things. I specifically remember the cars, but it was a lot of stuff. And then movie companies or TV productions could request, like, we need a fancy car. And they're like, yes, you can have this, I don't know, Audi, whatever. And that system ended up having like a time ranges. And the software was basically making sure that when you try to book something, that there's no overlaps and stuff like that. Not sure that actually helps, but it was a similar problem space, I guess.
Yeah, because what we are missing is absolutely that connection between, we talked about it a little bit before, the connection, like the time period connection in essence, because what is happening now is like everything is happening on a frame number of a bike, and that has a customer, but there should obviously be like a junction table here where it's like the customer has it from date 1 to date X to date A to date B, and then we kind of have that time frame, and then we could actually add in kind of like an estimated end time, when they're supposed to be delivering it in. And then I can see like how many bikes do we have available, within the next month. The only thing which is like when it works, when everybody delivers things in on time, that is kind of easy to model, but I kind of want to in some way let the system like have a little bit of like resilience around what if somebody doesn't deliver their bike and we like grab if we already have a bike in storage, then that's okay. But like some kind of like lenience in that we we can like manually fix things without having to email like 50 people on the list and be like, one of you can't show up on time. Like one of you won't get the bike. I don't know.
Yeah. I guess the idea of like I'm trying to remember how exactly we modeled it back then, but I think we had products and projects and then like reservations or something like that with a start and an end date. And I think you could do something similar. And if you have the reservations or like the assignments or whatever you call them, maybe have a state on them. And that would then add some buffer around the time frame, right? Like add a few weeks at the end or something like that, while it's like canceled but not returned or something like that. And the moment it's returned, you can
as soon as they return, because we do have like some bikes that have been returned, and those are easy to sell because we know the state of them. We know that if they can be sold or not. Like we know if they need to be, fixed, or it takes a long time to be fixed. So it's more about that like uncertainty around the bike that is coming in 2 months, and we don't want to piss people off if they've ordered something. And that's why this like ordering on specific bike doesn't work, because it should always be the one that ordered first who gets the first bike, no matter which bike has it's not in order when it comes in.
I feel like the assignment of the bike to the person should basically only happen on delivery, right?
Yes.
When they pick it up.
And that's how it was originally modeled. But then there were some things about trying to like resell bikes, and like then that kind of fell apart because the bike has like one person, can only have one person assigned to it. But what we need is like those time periods, like you say, that okay, this customer has the bike for these dates, and then an upcoming, and then it gets released in a certain
Unfortunately, though, it sounds like one of those problems where there's no perfect solution.
I don't think there's a perfect solution. Absolutely. And I think maybe what I need to do is start like, what is that in English? I like need to like start fixing it somewhere else. I need to fix these time periods before I go back to tackle this problem again. Because I think if I start doing that work and we get that pretty solid, then I think like a solution will materialize. And I also think that if we look back, like in a year, we'll have data on like how many bikes have problems and how many bikes are delivered too late. And when they're delivered too late, like how late is late? So, how much time should we add on to things? And we could probably also have a little bit of a look if people are always late to their maintenance appointment, like there's a higher chance that they might not show up with a bike when they were supposed to. And we could like do some kind of algorithm with some inputs, some AI to figure out how.
In theory, yes, but
how much buffer.
I think in reality,
no.
You'll figure out like a buffer percentage, and then you'll be fine. I feel like yes, you could over-engineer this, but you probably don't need to.
Probably don't.
Not at this scale.
So at this point, what we're actually just doing is that the operation guy is like manually setting an estimated arrival time. So he kind of like looks at the resignation and then just makes like a gut feel like when will this bike be available for pickup? And he like
that's probably good enough.
There's a lot of like internal, we don't have that many customers. Like he kind of knows, is there going to be trouble or not? And then he just adds a little bit on to the date.
You can, that's probably the best algorithm.
So I said, we'll start with that. And then when you've done that for a while and we kind of see how much buffer do we need, we can automate the buffer. So as soon as somebody resigned, we can say that it's like resignation date plus 3 weeks. And that's what we can promise our new customers. But it's a lot of fun working with like physical. It's a whole new set of problems or challenges, I guess. And then it's also a lot of fun getting to work with the operations guy, because then I can be like, oh, I suggest we'll do it like this. And he's like, what if that or that? And then we can actually do some tests. And I sit next to him and like, I get immediate feedback if this helps his life or not. And I find that kind of feedback loop is pretty cool. Yeah,
that's the most rewarding feedback loop. I feel like when you can come up with a solution that actually helps someone, and the person is like, yes, this saves me 2 hours a day or something like that. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm. And that's like very different from, so it's a little bit more challenging because of the physical aspects, but then it's like more immediate access to the people using the software. While in our SaaS world, they'll send a support request every now and then, but you don't get like a thorough understanding of their daily pains, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, that was off of the train stuff, but
yeah,
estimating things. What have you been working on?
What I've been working. Well, I've been on vacation, so not a lot of stuff happened. The week before my vacation, we made an effort to push a lot of stuff to production. Unfortunately, all of it is still behind feature flags, but at least it's out there and it's not sitting on a branch anymore, and it's part of the system. And even though some parts aren't done yet, they're at least part of the entire thing now, and we can toggle them and start testing them in real life, at least on our own accounts, which feels good because some of them have been long running projects. For example, one of the things is our conversion goals feature, which is already.
I remember you talking about that for a long time.
Yeah, exactly. It's been like, it's becoming a bit of a meme internally that I have a hate relationship with that feature. It stopped being a love-hate relationship a long time ago. But the first version of that is out there. I'm pretty sure will not survive like real world usage and not really scale well. But at least I know what to fix then, and it's not like theoretical anymore.
What's your hate? Is it because it's like an unsolvable? It's not. There is no perfect solution. Like you have to be okay with bad data, or is it that people?
It's one of those features that when you ask 20 people how to define it and how, like, especially when it gets into the nitty-gritty details, you get like 20 different opinions. And it's also, I feel like it's also one of those where to calculate like percentages and stuff like that, and also doing it performant, you need to take some I don't want to say shortcuts, but like you have to pick one way and be fine with that way not being 100% accurate. But if you take another way, that's also not going to be 100% accurate, and it's always a little bit of weirdness in there, and that makes it hard because, as I said, like it's one of those features where there is no perfect solution. They're all kind of A friend of mine recently summed this up pretty nicely, though. He said something like, the numbers don't have to be perfect. It's fine if they're slightly wrong, as long as they're consistently slightly wrong and you can see trends, right? Like the number can be totally arbitrary.
Here that says better done than perfect on it.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly that. So as long, like, it might show a conversion rate, and maybe the conversion rate isn't 100% accurate on whatever aspects because the time frame or something like that. But as long as it's like the constraints stay consistent, you can still see trends and stuff like that, and that's where it becomes important. Like in the end, having a conversion rate of 10%, that doesn't mean anything. What does mean something is that next week you do the experiment again and have like a conversion rate of 20%, and that's like an improvement to the week before. So that's the important part. The exact number doesn't matter that much, and that was a good insight where I was like, okay, yeah, makes sense. Then we can probably just like pick away and just move forward with it, and therefore
and don't keep changing the way, because then you will get inconsistent trends.
Exactly. Or like if we changed, I mean, now it's still not fully released, so it's still fine to change the way, I guess. But that exactly that. Like keep it consistent.
But this reminds me
make it make sense, I guess.
This reminds me of me. I had a really hard, so I did really well in math at university. Like I got A's in all of my math classes. In statistics, I had such a hard time. because I was like, I could just not
100%, yes.
I could not get this stuff to like make sense. And I was talking to my dad, who's in finance and also did really well in math while in university. And I was like, it doesn't make sense that, like, I can't, like, how can things be normally distributed? How can, like, I don't get it. And he was like, Benedicte, it doesn't make sense. Like, somebody has chosen to look at data this way. And there is new research coming out that shows that it's absolute blocks. But we still use these to understand things. So you just have to look at them as algorithms or like formulas, and just apply the formula like you do in algebra. Do not try to make this make sense. And I was like, okay. So then I did okay. I got like a C, I think, or B minus. I don't know. But like like you said,
you're
this guy like
explaining my struggles with statistics back in school and in university. It was always like, it does not make any sense. How can you take a sample of like 100 potatoes, and if they're all good, know that the rest of the shipment is good? That does not make sense. Maybe you got lucky picking the 100 potatoes, right?
Yeah, like he said.
But the thing is, like, in reality, it's a good enough estimate, and 99.9% of the time, that estimate is correct. So it's still useful, right?
But it is helpful when somebody kind of gives you permission, like this friend gave you, and like dad gave me at that time. It's like, no, you don't have to understand it. Like, you just need how to apply it. And if you can apply it, then that's fine. That's what you need for now, because I was not going to go into statistics. And that like gave me the headspace to be like, okay, I'm just going to not try, or I'm just going to let that be. And that helped.
Yep. Yeah, so I guess that's similar to what happened with that particular feature. The other thing that we pushed is two-factor authentication, which we're already using for ourselves, but it still has some pieces missing. So we're not releasing it for everyone just yet, but still glad it's out there. It's at least protecting our own accounts. And we talked about this a couple episodes ago with like, you have to figure out procedures and stuff like that. And I think that's one of the things we need to figure out before we actually push this live, because while the two-factor stuff during the login process is pretty straightforward, like that's probably the easiest part, everything else around it is incredibly, I don't want to say incredibly complicated, but it has like so many edge cases and things you need to think about ahead of time that it actually becomes harder. Like, for example, one thing that's currently missing, because we weren't quite sure how to do this, is when you remove a two-factor authentication method, do you need to provide your password again? Probably. I guess like it makes sense to have some sort of authentication. But the way our system works right now, whenever we ask for a password, we also want two-factor authentication. But you're currently trying to remove two-factor authentication, which might mean that you lost your phone or whatever. So we can't ask you for the thing you just lost. What else should we do? And stuff like that.
That's where you kind of often for two-factor authentication, you need two things. Like, you need the recovery codes, so that when you don't ask for two-factor authentication, or the whatever the code that's called.
And then talking about recovery codes, what happens if you used all your recovery codes? Like, do we just disable it and pretend it's not there? Do we keep like asking you for a recovery code, knowing very well that you don't have any? There's lots of open questions that
it does become
make this harder than it sounds. Yeah.
And I think this is where the whole discussion, because there's been a lot of, at least in my Twitter sphere, there's a lot of discussion around, is auth hard to build? Like, should you roll your own auth or not? And I think for your regular, password and email and password type thing, or like magic login links that you can send off, like some of those things are pretty easy. But I think where kind of these auth providers shine is for these things, where it's like they have a full setup for all of these like weird recovery things and the whatnot, that there is like a level where you shouldn't roll your own auth if you're too junior because you don't know what you're doing. And then you're like mid-level, you can build a pretty good roll your own auth. But then if you want to add on all of the security measures that enterprise wants, suddenly you don't want to roll your own auth anymore. So it's like a very hard decision, I think, for a business to make, like if they should roll their own or not. And some of these solutions become really, really expensive, and then some of them go bankrupt, and then where are you then when your auth solution is no longer in play? Then you need a backup. So it's one of those things I can't like decide on personally, like what the right thing is.
I feel like this experience of implementing this has opened me up a little bit to the idea of like using an external service or whatever to do auth, because exactly what you just described. Like, I feel confident in building like secure authentication with the basics, like ask for an email and password and encrypt it in database, stuff like that. Like, done it a lot of times, it's fine. But with those additional layers on top of it, it gets complicated, and like there's a lot of edge cases and there's a lot of nuances, and trying to anticipate all of them is pretty hard already. And admittedly, we've been looking at several of those authentication providers, more specifically their docs, to understand like how do they approach those edge cases? What do they request from you when you want to delete an authentication method and stuff like that? And it's fascinating, and I've become more open to just like using an external provider, even though part of me still thinks it's not a good idea. But I can see where the benefits are better now, I guess.
Yeah, it is one of those like easy and hard. I don't know what to call it. Simple but hard, or not simple even. It can go from like a simple. You can auth can be fairly simple, and it can be like super, super complicated, depending on requirements and user needs or wants. And those like simple requests, like, why don't you have two-factor authentication? And you're like, oh, sure. And then it's like, oh, okay. That was more than
This is exactly how this started. Not sure if I mentioned that, but I think we had 2 customers in a relatively short amount of time ask us for like, why don't you have two-factor authentication? I was like, yeah, we just never got to it, but sure. Like, if more people are asking for it, let's just do it real quick. We do this in a week. It's easy. Yeah, turns out. As I said, the login part, that was easy. That didn't take a lot of time. But the stuff around it, just crazy. Well, anyways, first version is out there for us at least, and we have to figure out the remaining stuff soonish, I guess.
I've also been experiencing polish pains because I'm working on this Framer outside thing that anybody who knows anything about Framer knows what it is. But I'm not allowed to talk about it in socials yet. But there also is like, I realize how much like the polish takes time, like getting like the MVP up and like getting the stuff working. But then the polish, or like the communication part of the thing, how the proper error messages and getting like the nice, and especially for Framer users, like they are used to very like polished, beautiful design where things just feels good. Like how that can like end up taking a lot longer than you think. Especially around error messages here, where it's like connecting between 2 systems, and you want to allow for kind of wrong configurations without crashing everything, but you also have to be very, you have to be there has to be like a visible indication that you've configured something wrong and like, please go fix that, without like being mean in your tone. Like it's like a little mini product. So that it's been fun, but also I realized like it takes time to get that like amount of polish, and hopefully we get to a place where it's good enough, or better done than perfect. So it will be fun to see the reactions to it, and I'm hoping to do some user testing when it's possible to do that on people who aren't into like frame or beta world. So that's going to been fun. And it's also the second thing that's been really good with it. It's just like, it's a little React single page application. And wow, is it liberating to just like work within one type of architecture and be like, this is only going to work in the client. Like there is no server side on this, or instead of the mix where it's like, oh, it's server side and client side and maybe some caching in between. And I don't know what happens where, but this is a true React single page application. And it's been fun to just like be in one solid realm.
Yeah.
And have complete control over that realm. Pretty nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been recently seeing more posts about people advocating to not use any, like, if you build a simple website, just build a simple website. Just write some HTML and some CSS. No build system, no nothing. Just 2 files, or I don't know how many pages you need, as long as like the scope is small. They specifically said, do your future self a favor and keep it as simple as possible. And I kind of appreciate that.
I just have a really hard time writing in HTML, but maybe that's something you can learn or get used to. Like I get annoyed, like if I have to update or write, and I have to like write the piece and the BRs and the ULs, and like if I have to do that while writing, like I get very frustrated. Like my writing takes a hit. So then I would have to write somewhere else and then like format it myself, and then like, well, then I want something to format it for me or like transform it for me, and then suddenly I'm not there anymore. And I see people like hard coding their sales pages and hard coding, and I guess maybe I should just get used to it. But like I just have such a hard time writing in HTML. Like it's a different part of my brain. I don't know, it just doesn't compute.
I don't think you should be writing in your code editor. Like writing should happen elsewhere just by default.
Oh, I write in my code editor. I like to write Markdown. Yeah. I love to write Markdown.
Yeah, but like, yeah. But then transform the Markdown and paste the raw HTML into your code editor.
I could do that. Right? But then, then you're like, well, I wanted to like automate. But
what if I just add a little build
and then you make your own static site generator, and there you go. And you hate yourself in 2 years.
And 2 years after, that particular version of Node doesn't work anymore, and that particular syntax is now deprecated, and it blows up in your face, and suddenly changing that typo on the homepage takes you like 10 hours.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Of course not. No one has ever experienced something like that.
I just like put my head in the sand and just pretend I didn't hear what you just said right now. But where's the fun in that? No, anyway. But closing off though, we've suddenly this was supposed to be a short one. But we had a lemonade stand, or Lillian had a lemonade stand this weekend. And it was truly like her effort. She squeezed 50 lemons. We totally miscalculated the amount of lemonade that was needed. We have lemonade for the next year, I feel. It was supposed to be like super sunny. It was because we had a heat wave, and the heat wave was supposed to continue into Sunday with like 30 degrees. And we were like, okay, there's going to be a lot of lemonade sold about approximately the same as the last time. But what I wanted to talk about is just like, and I am 40, so it's no surprise that you've learned something along the way. But like looking at these kids and how they go about their stands, you realize how much you've learned about like business and sales within those 40 years. Because especially So like the little kids, like Lillian, they're like 8 and 9. So they are a little like shy. So they kind of, they stand off to the side a little bit. And then we're like, you have to shout like freshly squeezed lemonade. Otherwise people are just going to walk past. And they do that. And they see that people come up but then they get distracted because a friend comes around and they forget to like look at their customers. And it's a whole thing. But then you get further up in the age, you have like the teenagers who are like sitting sourly on the bench looking at their phones. And like, I don't want to buy anything from you when you just sit there and it looks like I'm an inconvenience to you. And I feel like for those, like they really do this for the money. Like the little kids do it because it's fun, and they want to make money, but they don't realize, how much money are they actually making. And it's a little bit abstract. But then the teenagers, I'm thinking like, you're doing this because you want money, like you want a new phone, which is like one of the neighbors. And it's like, you gotta get up, you have to smile, you have to be like, hello. And I don't know how you learned this. And like, I know how I learned these things. And like, some of it was by having a job where you get yelled at, or not yelled at, but where you got like corrections, where it's like, then you don't slouch and like hang on furniture while you're in the store. You have to like stand up and you have to greet everyone that comes in the door. And I was like told these things by the manager at one of the first stores I worked at. And then all the way up to like running businesses now. But I thought about these kids and like, because there's less jobs for them, like proper jobs at that like age bracket. So I don't know if it's going to take them like longer to learn some of these like lessons or not. But it was fun. It was interesting, like seeing the different ways they approached this. And some were really good. Like, and some of it is like just some people are more like naturally outgoing and like a little bit more like that. But yeah.
Or maybe they had someone yell at them last year.
True. Like one of the best stands was this little kid who had like a candy store, and his mom is in charge of like importing and selling candy in one of the luxury brands. So I feel like she might have like, or I think he's been to her job. Like he had a little bit of know-how. And it was really good. And he did really well. Like all the kids wanted to buy candy,
Nice. Well, yeah, if you sell candy, it's probably also cheating a little bit, isn't it?
Well, you could say that. You could say that. No, but it was just very well executed. But yeah. Business lessons learned young.
Yep. Cool. I unfortunately have to run.
Yeah, we have to quit.
But it was good catching up with you. And talk to you in 2 weeks, I guess.
Absolutely. See you around the interwebs.
See ya. Bye.